Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fifth episode of the Diversity Minded podcast with me, James Gale, and the lovely.
Melissa White.
Hey, we're back in the building again. 5 episodes already. Time is really, really flying.
I
Especially with
haven't
how.
actually moved. I've been here since the last
Yeah,
episode.
well, you kind of we just turn off after this and we reboot. Ready. But on the
I
topic of.
mentioned my home.
Oh, right, right. I went immediately to robot dystopian future. So that was.
I was
The
like, how sad. I've actually just not. No, I did go to Prague. Never mind.
Well, that's an interesting one. We'll touch on that in a minute. Remember to make me ask about that because I will forget. Because today's topic is a very interesting one, and it was a very spur of the moment topic as well for this podcast, and it's mainly going to be about the importance of personality and individuality in personal life, in work forms, in content creation. Obviously, I'm a marketer, you're a sales leader and consultant, and many other things all wrapped up into one bow. Too many specialisms for me to name, it would be the whole show. So in that sense, why is individuality and embracing that individuality an important topic to even talk about? I'll hand that one over to you first, Melissa.
Thanks. Well, I think that it really sparked off when I was telling you about this really cool conversation I had with a founder of this really interesting technology earlier today. And what attracted me to reach out to him was actually some of the more challenging, controversial things he was commenting on LinkedIn. And then we started talking about, and I know that authenticity to you is super important. That's how we really saw a lot of alignment in what we care about, how we show up. But, so often I feel that people just stay in the gray zone, and either they're being, they're not really kind of coming to the party with who they really are, and so you never
Mm.
really know who they are, which just isn't. I don't want to hang out with people like that, but I don't know if I trust people like that.
No, and we kind of touched on it in similar episodes where like the corporate safe zone and the grey zone, as you called it. No one trusts no one that doesn't do anything or isn't really themselves, and this goes from companies and individuals. And I think this is where a lot of companies go wrong. They think that personality, individuality, and authenticity come from people rather than brands. And I'm mostly talking about the more corporate brands here, maybe more on the B2B side. And I've always called it the kind of boring to boring box that they get stuck in. That everyone's just like, there's an invisible set of rules, especially on LinkedIn, everyone abides by, and it makes me physically ill because you don't have to look that far. You probably have to open your phone for about 10 seconds for a case study to appear in front of you that is proving that you stick into the safe zone will give you absolutely nothing, and you will just fold into the background and no one will care who you are or what you do. You can't be something for everybody, and I think a lot of brands try to do that. And I think that's a scale issue. If you're looking at large scale, as let's say banks or other corporates that are literally trying to get everyone, then that's a different kind of marketing issue. But yes, individuality, especially on LinkedIn, is important because you would never have seen that post if he wasn't being controversial. And I'm guessing this is controversial by LinkedIn standards because my idea of controversial and LinkedIn's are probably very different.
Yeah. Well, but just his views being, well, him being okay with not being like everybody else or thinking like everybody else. And I think that, you know, it was really interesting. And the Prague trip was me meeting my sisters,
Mm.
and the ones who live in Dallas, and actually one who lives here in the UK. But we are very different in our personality styles. And I had seen this Simon Sinek video, which
What a man, legend.
was just hit my soul because he talked about how do you give honest feedback if you hate something, and if you show up to a play to watch your best friend and it's a terrible play, in fact it's the worst play you've ever seen, how do you lie to them, or do you tell them honestly? And he talked about that, and I thought, oh my gosh, because so his first thing was I don't lie. So him saying that it was the best play would be a lie, but
Mm.
him giving feedback that was authentic, like you looked like you were in your element and you just shone as you were performing, wouldn't be a lie. And then he called her the next day and said your play was awful. And I thought, and gave her the reasons why, but she was in an emotional state when she first asked, so he didn't want to lead with that and be brutally honest. And I think it's picking our moments. The reason why that's so important is I am a really straightforward, direct person, which often gets me into trouble. And then my sisters, one of them is like the nicest person in the entire world, would never say anything to hurt anybody to their face. She might say it, but she might say it behind their back, but will never actually go against them to their face. So I think that being authentic, I mean, surely that means that you're happier if you're not having to worry about if somebody's going to get offended. I mean, obviously we have to be respectful, but if somebody's going to get offended or not.
I think, I've always admired people and characters that just embrace themselves to such a full degree where they actually attract others to them. And I think this is where, me going back to the marketing thing, content creators are the example. That every content creator has their own niche, their own audience, and people that relate to them in different reasons, for different reasons in different ways. It's actually part of being a leader in entrepreneurship or management or corporate or wherever, where actually you being ruthlessly yourself half the time will gravitate far more people towards you. As long as you're personality compatible with the organization, of course. And I'm going to awkwardly reach over here because my rebrand from that I'm planning next year, from kind of Shogun Social to Straw Hat Social, is mainly based off of this show right here. So One Piece is all about a pirate crew, so you can try and get more edgy than that. A pirate crew that all have their individual goals, also one goal, to make the captain there the pirate king, and they want to support him in his goal because he's so nice and authentically himself and helps them no matter what, and wants them to have their own individual goals. That's the kind of way I want to run my companies, but also it's just a pure masterclass in leadership. Like, it's just a different style of leadership, and that's why I'm obsessed with that show. And it may be a Japanese anime, but I draw so much inspiration from that I run my companies in that sense. And it's just about being so ruthlessly yourself. It becomes a management style.
I love that. And you've never shared that with me. And so does that mean like I'm a pirate queen?
Hell
Because
yeah.
because so I literally love helping people, and I mean, if I could, well, I do have kind of one free service that I put all my money into with leaseholders, but my ulterior motives, I don't go around with ulterior motives, and I was really reflecting on this today that, living here, or let's talk about business locally, because it's not a big scene here in Southampton, and you've got uber successful people that I feel when you meet them, you kind of know there's an agenda, and they play it safe. Loads of people love them, but that's because they're everything to lots of people. I realize that's not me, right? But then it can be a lot lonelier being totally yourself. But the authentic people that I have met up with, they're actually operating a lot on their own too. Like yourself as a founder of the biggest digital marketing company here in
Biggest social media agency.
Oh, sorry.
Trust me, there's some big old agencies here, so I'm not competing in that space.
Social media agency. My bad. But that entire persona that people put on, that where you never actually know who they really are. I don't know. I just find that really difficult to trust from a personal level. So I totally hear what you're saying from companies that don't necessarily know how to show up in an authentic way either.
Yeah, and I think it's a hard challenge for companies who are obviously they're probably very, very old companies. They're people that work with them that are actually responsible for turning this kind of change around. They don't have any actual stake in the company, most likely. So whether they be marketing managers or something like that, there's going to be a humongous portion of the company that is probably responsible for the majority of that change, that don't have a stake in the game to make it happen. Like, a job is a job, and I 100% still agree with that sentiment. whenever I reflect that sentiment, I'm always talking to C-suite and seniors and those who actually care enough, let's say stock options or founders or whatever it happens to be, where they've got stake in the game. Those are the people who should care the most and can actually change the direction of the ship when it needs to happen. And again, to go back to like a One Piece thing, I think, you know, he'll turn up and overthrow a government because someone's hungry. You know, that's the type of guy he is. He's like, starving children, absolutely not. And he'll just overthrow the government. So okay. Anarchy, but like.
Oh yeah, not about the. Yeah. Oh well, actually, yeah. Anyway.
Hey, you know,
that's another
government special next episode.
But just on that, James, really quickly, before I lose my train of thought, when you talk about enabling the authenticity of these organizations and big corporates, the people you're talking about, so you're coming in to help effectively the sales and marketing functions, right? Mm-hmm. So they can sell more, so they can get their brand out there more, so they can have better presence in the market. And yet the majority of marketing leaders in particular who would be responsible for a lot of what you do, from the big organizations that I've worked within, they never have a direct connection to the CEO or the chief revenue officer. They're kind of like just out there trying their best to create, but to get funding or budget for real visionary stuff, it's missed because those guys don't see it. Guys or girls don't see it.
Yeah, and it's the typical kind of C-suite to rest of the team disconnect. That happens all the time, and the people that put in the kind of real blood, sweat, and tears are either shot down immediately because someone on the board doesn't get it, or it's a very frustrating process, I think, especially for a lot of marketers. But even when you do see a massive change in the marketplace for a brand that really wants to redefine themselves, I mean, everyone and their mother has talked about the Jaguar rebrand and seeing how that's gone from one thing to another. I'm not sure if you're familiar about the sounds of it, but they're going all electric, so they've changed their brand to be a lot more kind of, I assume, universal, friendly, colourful. It to me, a lot of their advertising looks a lot more like a fragrance brand than anything else. Generated massive controversy online because it's a kind of great British legacy brand, and I'm sure there's many a man going, oh, it's woke nonsense. They're getting up in arms about it. I mean, I couldn't care. I couldn't care. I couldn't care less. Like, I can't afford a Jaguar right now, so I couldn't give a monkey's what they look like. So in that sense, you know, it's for a particular audience. They are redefining themselves for the future. So even when you do take massive risk, you again, it's the risk. Some people might hate what you do, but I assume there's a lot of people also defending Jaguar, and then that will become their new thing. And we haven't seen what the cars will look like yet. Just because the logo changed doesn't mean the quality of the car will change, or so on and so forth. They could get dramatically better from a product point of view. We have no idea where that's going to go. But I think when a C-suite sees an example like a Jaguar and how bad that can go, at least from how they've seen a negative PR point of view, it'll freak them out from ever changing or redefining themselves in any even minuscule way that might rock the boat, and it will keep them in the grey zone out of fear and just wanting to retain their position in the market, or even just retain their job, because sometimes also it's a case of don't rock the boat, because if you're seen making too much ruckus, you're gone. So, which is the awfulness of corporate. But we'll find a way to make that work, and it's just these little things here and there, these little pieces of content that can inspire you. Hopefully, what we're trying to do, that will help you, make those good, positive things in the future.
I was just trying to get the.
The rebrands up.
Looking at gray matter, because as we were talking about the gray zone and gray matter within the brain, but when you're talking about that, people are fearful of what others will perceive them as, and it keeps them stuck in these boxes of total unoriginality and inauthentic kind of sad boxes. One of the things that I wonder, though, is, do you think that the judgment, one thing that I discovered when I moved over here to the UK, I was really surprised that nobody invited me to their home. And it was like a big thing and for me, I'm really big. I love inviting people over and to my house. And then I started wondering, well, are they afraid that I would judge it? And I
Yeah.
so but in order to be afraid of being judged, you have to be a judgmental person. So the majority of times, if you're afraid of being judged, then you're either judging yourself or you're judging others. And you know that that isn't great. And so you
Mm.
fear that people might be doing that to you. Now, I'm a high a high influence in the disc spectrum. So I'm ID, influence and dominance, and it's dominance, influence, steadiness, compliance. High I's really fear rejection. So
Mm.
if you have influence as a strength in your trait, you're actually, even if you pretend like it doesn't phase you, it does. Not being accepted or liked, that doesn't feel great. Whereas there are some personality types that truly don't care. So what are your thoughts on, I guess from a diverse perspective, you think differently, but you're also biracial. What are your thoughts on how authentic you can be when have you well, I imagine you have struggled with being
Mm.
accepted yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's any biracial, any person of color in a majority white company will have heard the term code switching. Right, I'm not sure if it's just for our communities, but code switching is putting on your, for lack of a better term, your best white phone voice, and making those jokes around the coffee machine, like working hard or hardly working. Am I right, John? And then you just kind of you get into those you get into that zone, and then you take that hat off, which is just really another form of masking who you actually are, because you're trying to fit in with the company culture to essentially make the bills, get the bills paid. So, and then there's that, but there's also, for those who think differently, neurodivergency. Masking is huge. One of the reasons for, I think, my burnout last year was basically trying to mask as an efficient, detail-oriented CEO type person, when I am just not that. And there's only so long you can pretend to be something else. And I know some people use it as like a confidence thing, so fake it till you make it style thing. But if you're in a constant pressure cooker every day where you're having to become someone else to make something happen, there's only a finite amount of time that can work. And especially if you're trying to do both, and if you're of both communities like I am, it's extremely hard to do. Hence why I've been self-employed for as long as I have been, and that's why I embrace that ruthless authenticity thing and personality thing for myself, because then you attract others around you that are similar, so you don't have to code switch, or you don't have to mask your personality as much. But I think it can also come with stepping into new roles of seniority that you're first trying to get to know, and there's lots of different scenarios and things that it can take place within. So it's tough. It's tough, but it can be manageable. And like we talked about in previous episodes, as long as managers and leaders are giving time for proper one-on-ones and actually getting into some of the minutiae of questions, getting to know that person better, you'll find that the masking or code switching doesn't have to be as severe every single day. The more comfortable you make your team members.
Well, so on that point of you doing things that aren't natural to your personality type, which is the more analytical, logical process
Mm.
information, if you are doing things that aren't aligned to your personality type, then that would almost I would guarantee that at some point you're maybe hopefully not burn out, but it's unsustainable. You
Mm.
can't continue putting energy into, so if you only have 100% of energy and every day you have 100% that you're bringing to your job, and 50% of that is doing tasks that you hate. Like, let's say I'm an introvert and I have to call and talk to people all day. That actually will increase the drainage of my energy far faster than the tasks that I can do naturally. So, how do we really get to understand, okay, well, I'm going to leave that to someone else? Now, you talk about, being an entrepreneur, going to these networking events where I know that I appear to be pretty, social and talkative, and I am, but it makes me really uncomfortable to go into a room of people that I don't know. And unfortunately, I just all have always never really fit in. So I just assume I'm not going to fit into those. And that's
Mm.
my own perceptions that I need to work on for myself. But how do we ensure that we're doing the right things to help sustain our businesses whilst also showing up authentically? Well, rubbing shoulders and smiling at everybody and saying, "Hey, how are you?" and pretending that, I am following some of the stuff that they're doing, that's not authentic to me, so I just avoid that altogether.
It is a very tough, probably customized to each person question. I mean, one of the because there's also multiple barriers. Depending on where you are in your career, that was probably at first one of my biggest barriers, because especially when you're a younger entrepreneur, you have to go into a room and basically be as double as impressive as you think you need to be to make sure that you can overcome the objection of age. I think at some point, it's not happening to me very often anymore. But back when I first started things, it was like, oh my god, look at this guy. He's like a maverick. He's like, you have to pretend to be some like mega talented,
Well,
I'm
you
not
weren't
sure.
pretending. Come on. Stop it.
Yeah, you have to bet. You basically have to pretend to be a prodigy if you're a younger entrepreneur to try and gain respect of others, especially if you're in some kind of speaking role or even at networking events. If you look fresh-faced, and I'm sure many people will relate to this, where you're having to break into that circle for the first couple of times and weasel your way into a conversation where there's a bunch of people who are much older and more developed in their career, which is really intimidating for a start. Even if they're all your age in similar places, you're aware of your standing in the situation, and you have to basically put that mask on, pretend to be someone else for a bit, and impress as much as you can. It's very hard to do. So wherever someone is in their career age-wise, that can play a factor. But as you get older and jaded, like I am now, I just dive directly into like conversation that interests me, and whoever picks up on that wavelength, I just gravitate to that person. And me having a really engaging, thought-provoking conversation with one person gets others chiming in. So it's very much like there's probably some kind of silly rule of power thing around this, and I'm not really reading those type of books, but it's a case of I just dived in exactly where I want to be in that conversation. I think the last time I did, I was talking about AI, functional AI tools for helping businesses. And of course, when people start hearing things that they can start using, they chime into the conversation. And before you know it, the circle isn't a circle anymore. It's a semicircle looking at you. And now you own that space. And it depends what you're trying to get out of that conversation, obviously. But for me, I'm always trying to get my expertise out there and just help people as much as possible, because that's what we both do. We've both probably been told by many people that we give too much away, always. But that's my tactic, because what we both recommend is super resource intensive. So take as much advice as you want. Good luck pulling off by yourself. That's what I always say to people. So that's my take on it, at least. I mean, what do you think?
Well, when you say AI, last week I was in an AI and robotics like demo day by universities, surrounded by professors and super, super clever people. I am, like way out of my league, these people are. And at the end of the evening, there were a couple of professors and another startup founder who's working in prop tech, super, super clever guy. And we didn't really know each other. Well, I knew the startup founder, but we didn't really know each other. So we sat around the table, and my conversation starter was, "Tell me something. Let's talk about something that nobody else in our companies know about us, or nobody professionally knows about us." And so I like to get deep into kind of like that stuff, because a lot of the technology or the business, you know, I love talking about people's businesses, and I really love giving people ideas that they hadn't thought about. But I think because I love sales so much, they naturally think that I'm selling them something. And so,
Yeah.
or that I want something out of them, and how much I have helped people without having £1 in payment, not even a coffee. I usually buy the coffee. That's a good,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I genuinely don't want anything from you. So that's an authentic. I just love to help people.
Yeah, which it does feel rare, or like, it always feels like there's an agenda for something. And I think, online and social has a big part to play in why we default to that, because usually behind any piece of video content or behind every clip there is some kind of course or something behind a paywall. Or I think any content creator has to fight against that stereotype first of all, and any agency founder now has to fight against the, are you just trying to sell me a course? No, I'm just trying to put content out there to help people and hopefully attract the similar type of people to me. I literally make content till the cows come home, and then if someone needs my help, they can reach out to me. I don't even do outreach myself. I'm an inbound marketer through and through, because ultimately the right type of client, the right type of person has to come to me for that. You cannot, as contrary to a lot of what salespeople selling courses will tell you, you cannot make someone buy if they do not need or want your product. They've usually made their mind up before you've even chatted with them, most likely. So in that sense, just be yourself and help people is the goal and the method. And hopefully the more people can start making stuff like we are, then we'll get to trust each other a bit more.
Well, I actually think, though, that there's a little bit of sales that you could learn, because you have great, great information and a great system in place to help people get their brands out there and eyes on their company that a lot of people don't know about. So, like for me, and it's like, okay, well, which hat am I wearing? The the things that I do, I love talking about it because I literally love sharing about the information and the science behind the personality profiling, and why having other personalities is so important around you to help lift up where you have gaps, just so that you're a high performing team. But from a having people come to you, that's why you having a salesperson or a method that helps to close those opportunities, or filter through those opportunities, because there's only one of you, James, and you can't spend all day just giving free information away to help people's businesses. Nor can I, because that doesn't pay the bills, and it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a content socialist and just a content communist at this point.
I love that. That should be that. I mean, well,
I'm going to change my handle. I've just downloaded Blue Sky to test that out as the Twitter alternative. So I feel like the content socialist is definitely going to be the new Blue Sky handle.
I think I love it. I actually really, really love that.
Comrade Gale is here to stay.
Comrade Mel. Oh, my grandfather was. Oh, yeah, we won't talk about that.
Well, it was controversial, the episode of this podcast, so let's down with it. Yeah. Position on Maoism, yeah.
Well, no, my non-Chinese grandfather, my white grandfather, was very, very aligned with, very, very much believed in socialism and helping people and lifting people up. So that's pretty much what this is about.
Yes.
I am. So is that it? I don't.
No,
I haven't even
well,
seen our time.
I mean, I've got a couple more things
Okay, cool.
I want to talk about, mainly for people in their first roles. I think is something that I want to talk about, whether they're sales or marketing or any other divisions. From if you don't know your personality type yet, something like that, I mean, just some top level tips to give to them on what's the best way to ingratiate yourself to the corporate life when you're first starting out, because we've both had a fair amount of experience for the both of us. But if you could turn back time, what's some of the things you might change or give advice to the younger folk who might be watching?
I would be very impressed with companies that offer personality profiling and then ask for a debrief if they do. So some of the big corporates have these personality profiles, but they don't give any of the information back to the candidate who's applying. Now, those reports are extremely valuable. What it told me, had I had that earlier on, was that I'm not great with admin. I'm not a logical, process-oriented person. So if I'm required to spend a lot of my time doing those activities, I'm not going to be as successful as I could be if you let me kind of run free and had maybe some support in those areas. Likewise, if somebody's thinking about, I would really do your best to try to get access to the disc is the easiest that that I think is the easiest out of all the MBIT and well,
Mm.
Myers-Briggs and the rest of them. But my similarly understand, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Do you like structure and do you like to move at a calm pace? Because if you do, high intensity environments are not going to be great for you. You're going to want to be in a place that gives you time, that where you can follow the structure. Maybe you can do the same thing over and over as a specialist and not
Mm.
get bored. So, and if you're high D in dominance, how do you learn not to be so direct so that you upset everybody around you? Or
Hmm.
how do you, because unfortunately, a lot of the people in team environments, you need to be you need to collaborate, and there will be different skills bringing up different components. Did that answer your question?
It did, yeah. And I think the if I were going to play devil's advocate for a minute, to play the part of the fun part of corporate grouch, let's say, the when people apply for a job, the job description usually has all the different bits on it. There's every job has some form of admin that someone's probably not going to like, and I think it's underestimated how much incompatible tasks and things you do at work can affect your pace and productivity. But from someone who's just signing off the spreadsheets, who doesn't really care that much, how do we get to convince them that actually diverting some of what was originally on that job description to someone else that suits it more, and vice versa? How do we get that conversation started? Because usually, from my experience, you do what you apply for, and there's usually not much flex around that. If there's some admin you don't like, it's usually the answer is tough. How do we get around that and start to move into a place where we can actually be more flexible with the delegations and tasks you have to do at work?
Really great point. So I prefer talking to leaders, right? Leaders like to make money, save time. Usually, those are the things that they're trying to drive in order to increase their bottom line. If you have somebody that is could be making you money and you're getting them to do administrative tasks, having that conversation makes it's a lot easier than operating it on a role based level. Although if you're working with teams and you have a team leader, I always share that they should delegate tasks to people who really thrive on the things that they do well, and then allocate tasks according to their strengths,
Mm.
bearing in mind that everybody, in order to improve, you want them to look understand their limitations and proactively coach to those so that they can improve, because you're never going to have the perfect role that just does the one thing, unless you're an artist. But even that, if you're an artist and you love painting every day, you're super creative, you're not going to be very successful if you don't sell any. So you're
Yeah, so
probably
you have
going to
to
have
learn
to,
business and sales. Yeah.
right? Yeah, you have to do some of the stuff that you don't like. And work, so when you have these reports, you have a list of limitations, choose a couple of them and proactively work on them for the next 3 months. And I guarantee the limitation will become less of a limitation, and then you can move on to the next thing. You'll
Mm.
incrementally increase your ability and performance.
100%. And for my advice for non-leaders and just people who, because I had certain things I had to do in jobs that, like, as soon as I knew it was there, that those pieces of admin, and I'd let it build up, and it would ruin my day, my week, everything. Use tech as much as possible to help you overcome some of the barriers. I'm borderline dyslexic and probably ADHD, so in that sense, I have to do all kinds of workarounds to get stuff done. If there's some kind of contract that's important that I have to read, I put it into a text-to-speech translator and get it to read it back to me. If I've got something to alter, I'll try and use ChatGPT as much as possible to alter a document in the format it's in, because otherwise that's so much admin that would kill any creativity or energy I had left in me. There's so much, you don't want to kill your soul in what you're doing, so lean on as much tech as possible that your workplace will let you get away with. That's my thing. Obviously, I have free reign, but it's sometimes restrictive in-house, so figure out what you can and can't use.
Okay, can I give you an example though of where old school status quo is very prevalent, and that's in the legal industry.
Yes.
And As I'm helping leaseholders, my entire premise is to save them time, save them money on the expensive resources. There's a solicitor who has pretty much yesterday told me that they couldn't help me with this project because instead of downloading a land registry title that's online in real time and putting that into PDF, they needed me to apply for the title in hard copy, get it posted. And they'd do it for me, of course, for like 4 times the price, but
Mm.
do all of those antiquated parts to the process. They needed that, or else they couldn't help me. And it totally goes against what I'm trying to accomplish for leaseholders. And
Hmm.
so we're at this stalemate, yet they're not going to budge, and I am not going to budge. So I have to find somebody who understands that, you know, you don't have to do things the same way that you've always done them just because you've always done them that way.
Isn't that the theme of the world right now? Right? It's
That's the theme of our podcast.
yeah, 100%, and it's definitely more prevalent in certain industries. I think you're right. Legal has a reputation, shall we say, for liking to stick to a tradition. I think even politically as well, you'll see the similar thing. I mean, you're seeing the effects of increased personal branding and how it's basically won the US election. But if you look at UK politicians, can you name any of them that have a good personal brand? And it's probably because there's some kind of parliamentary rule, or like the parties themselves aren't investing enough in content creation themselves, even though that is how I think modern politics will move into. I think it's going to move into a content sphere, and it will be a competition of viewership and podcasting as we move away from traditional mediums. So but that's going to happen to every industry. It may take some time for it to affect legal or affect banking or something like that, but it's coming for you regardless. You have to update and give your brand or your industry a voice before you are left behind in the sea of the ever-growing internet. And there's no stopping it. So especially if you have any restrictions on basic technology that can just help you stay more productive as an employee, silly rule to have. Mm-hmm. The only restrictions are GDPR and kind of safety for legal stuff, or stuff that's NDA, things like that. I can understand why you're not going to put confidential documents into an AI. And those type of jobs obviously attract the people that can do that job anyway. You don't go through law school and can't read a few books. So I know I couldn't. So it's, everyone needs to update and modernise. It's just a case of whether you're going to be forced into it or whether you're going to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just a really unfortunate situation. I was really shocked by the whole thing, to be honest. But I am taking it as I'm nowadays, if anything doesn't work out, I'm thinking that's because there's something better. So there's probably a better, more aligned, visionary solicitor out there that cares about helping leaseholders and doesn't care if something comes by snail mail or comes out of their is saved into a shared drive. But
yes.
Yeah, no, really, really good. Oh, this is.
There's a whole another episode there probably, and complaining about different industries, but we'll save your ears for that one, folks. It would be interesting though, anyone who is in and around the legal sphere. Obviously, there's lots of different moving parts to legal. Anyone wants to come on the show and have a chat to us on just giving us some insight on what is that like? What is it like when you might actually have a different type of personality and you're or different diversity of mind or something like that, and you're forced to do things that really aren't compatible with you, but you still want to stay in legal. I think that's an interesting little intersection that we might want to visit. So anyone that wants to jump in, drop us a message. We'll definitely talk about that. We should be recording the next one very soon, so we're going to be very happy about that. But until then, I've been James.
And I'm still Melissa.
Luckily. And we shall see you on the next episode.
Bye.